John, I ask you this. If not Georgia, who? When you look at the college football landscape, both at the SEC level and nationally, it looks like Georgia might have a stranglehold the way Alabama had under Nick Saban. Could be in the beginning stages of that type of run. So if not Georgia, who? Let's talk some football here. Hit like and subscribe.
I think, Dave, if you're going with if you go nationally, Ohio State is an obvious choice, but it just keeps coming up short under Ryan Day. I would probably go with a dark horse that other people wouldn't pick. I really like Ole Miss. And I know Lane Kiffin has not taken a team to that level. He's certainly improved Ole Miss. I think he's done an amazing job. But he's brought in some really good players through the transfer portal. And I think he's brought in the kind of guys who are going to be, they're going to be united, and they're kind of in their history. They went to Ole Miss because it's like a fresh start. And I'm sure there's a lot of NIL money involved, and also because of Lane Kiffin. But I think there's an opening there behind Georgia in the SEC. And I would take Ole Miss over probably anybody right now.
Caleb?
So is this about, if not Georgia, then who to win the SEC or to win it all?
Let's start SEC and then let's go nationally. How about that?
Okay, because, my question, because I'm on the playoff soapbox and I'm just going to have to respond to you two guys. Who cares who wins the SEC? 12 teams are making the playoff. This is the stupidity of the playoff. So I don't really care who wins the SEC championship right anymore because they devalued it. And that's my soapbox for the day. Greg Sankey screwed it up. All right. So now beyond that, to who is going to challenge Georgia, if not to win the SEC? I mean, I'm going out there, guys, but I'm sticking with Tennessee. I am so high on Tennessee with Nico Iamaleava, and I know y'all can call me crazy all day, but Josh Heupel went all in on 2024. My question is, you say if not Georgia, then who? I say if not 2024 for Tennessee, then when?
Well, how about John, Tennessee being in that conversation for the SEC? Do you like Tennessee or Ole Miss more of the season?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a toss-up. I like Tennessee a lot. I think it's a playoff caliber team. I've kind of downgraded Alabama, and maybe that's a mistake based on history. But my top four teams would be Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Texas. And I'd have Alabama fifth, probably Oklahoma sixth.
Okay, so those are just SEC teams. What about nationally? Your thoughts on the Vols? But first, if not Georgia, who nationally for the national title? Brought to you by Don Self, State Farm agent right there in Chattanooga. Right down below, donself.net, donself.net. 40 years. 40 years they put their business on taking care of their customers. Customer service still matters. It absolutely does. So I know everybody's shopping price, but when you make that claim, you want to make sure you're taken care of. donself.net, donself.net, right below. John, so if not an SEC team, I guess, who else do you like to replace Georgia as the potential favorite, which I think they are by most booking services we use? BetUS, John.
Well, it's hard to look past Ohio State. To me, that's just obvious because of accumulation of talent. And no, it hasn't won a national championship. It came so close in the 22 season when it almost beat Georgia in the semifinal game. So, yeah, to me, it's not even – I can't even think of anybody else. I guess you could throw Oregon out there with Dylan Gabriel at quarterback. That would be probably my second pick. I expect Michigan to drop off significantly without Jim Harbaugh. Florida State, I don't think will be as good. Clemson, it's fallen behind. It's a good program, but I don't see it as a championship contender. And when I look at it that way, it makes me think of the opportunities for the SEC. we tend to lump the Big Ten and the SEC together now. They're the two superpower conferences. But really, I think right now the SEC has a big advantage there, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for SEC teams to get into the playoffs.
Caleb, I know you liked Tennessee this season. They're plus 3,500 to win the national title. Would you lay a hundy on that?
Yeah, I'd lay 100 on that.
How about 1,000, Caleb?
No, I'm not. No, I don't bet that big.
No, John.
It's funny you say that because I was, as Dave asked the question, and I wanted to go national too, and then I kind of thought, you're right. Outside of Ohio State, like USC, Lincoln Riley's showing me nothing to show that he cares about defense whatsoever. And Michigan, I do agree with the drop off. My problem with Ohio State is that, look, I'm sorry, Ryan Day has chronically underachieved there. Given the talent level he's had, Ohio State, and John, I don't know how you'll feel about this because you're from the area, but I feel like Ohio State is right there with LSU, where you could sleepwalk your way to a national title given the talent that's surrounds the school. And those are my top two. And Ryan Day has lost to Michigan 3 times in a row, and now they're bringing in Chip Kelly. I think that was forced on Ryan Day, and trust me, I don't think that's going to go well. I think that's going to cause an implosion to a certain degree. And so I'm with you. I think it's just the SEC. And speaking of, I did leave out LSU. I think LSU could challenge Georgia because, again, I think LSU, you could get a robotic coach and wake up one day and you just have a national title team because there's so much talent in that state.
So, John, did any of these numbers surprise you? The money line, according to our friends at BetUS, Georgia is a plus 330. Alabama is a plus 480. They would actually be second on the list. Texas is a plus 700. And then you get to Oregon's a plus 900. So a 9-1 favorite, essentially. Then you get into Alabama. I'm sorry, I misspoke. Ohio State was a plus 480. Alabama was a plus 1,400. I misspoke. My apologies. Does it surprise you that Ole Miss is just a plus 1,500 just behind the other SEC schools, Alabama, Georgia, and LSU, but behind Alabama and LSU by just plus 100? People think a lot of Ole Miss's chances to win a national championship this year, and that's not a big betting community there to affect the line. John, Ole Miss at a plus 1,500. What if Lane Kiffin wins a national title? My, oh, my.
Yeah, we still wonder about him because he hasn't gone to that level. He hasn't made a playoff, and some people don't think maybe. I think Ole Miss has an image like it's overachieving. It's kind of, some people I think probably might look at Ole Miss the way they looked at Kentucky when Kentucky would win 10 games with kind of a accommodating schedule, and they think, yeah, that's nice, but that's all they can do. I think you should look at Ole Miss differently because it just won 11 games, and this transfer talent is impossible to ignore. I mean, I'd bet on Ole Miss before I'd bet on Ohio State.
I would too. I think I'd bet on 5 SEC teams before I bet on anybody outside of the SEC this year. And I normally don't say that. There's usually 1 or 2 outside of the SEC, but I don't see anybody in the field this year outside of the SEC.
Well, and now with Jim Harbaugh gone, do you think the Big Ten concerned at all, John?
I think it should be. I'm not a big fan of promoting assistants for jobs like that. I mean, the players always love the assistant. Jim Harbaugh gave him his blessing, said that was the obvious choice, but I don't think that usually works out that well.
General Nealon was an assistant the year before he was promoted.
And Fulmer, John.
I know. I remember commenting on that in a column on that, and I said I think it's a bad move. I was proved wrong later, but at the time I didn't agree with the decision.
On General Nealon. I like that. Be sure and check out John's column. He is fantastic. He throws heat each and every day, and he joins us each and every Tuesday. John, Caleb, pick one team, just one team that is most likely to upset Georgia? Caleb, you go first.
I'm sticking with Tennessee. I think this year Tennessee has the chance to do it.
Okay, John.
And John, you weren't on as much last year. I'm not the homer you think I am covering them. I've been very critical of Tennessee in the past, so Dave can vouch for me on that.
Don't be so defensive, Caleb. And nobody calls you a homer. I think there's some insecurity in that area. No, I would probably go. I think Tennessee's a good pick. I just don't. I'm not a believer in Texas. I'm not. I don't know why. I mean, it just made the playoff. It's rolling. It's got NIL money, but I would still probably. I would go with Ole Miss or Tennessee. I think I'd pick Ole Miss.
John, I was having the same conversation in my head about Texas. What? Not to keep you too long, but why do we not believe in Steve Sarkisian?
I'm not sure because I didn't think he would make the playoff. He didn't. He exceeded my expectations last year.
Yeah, I think Oh, sorry.
No. I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe because Texas has been down so long, and we look at Steve Sarkisian's history, and he didn't do that well at Southern Cal. There was some. I don't know. It's an image thing, and I may be totally wrong. But I just don't. I mean, I believe in Lane Kiffin more than Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, and where I would add to that is that Texas got to the playoff last year on the backs of a win at Alabama that was not the Alabama team that made the playoff. That was not a good team they beat, the Alabama team. And if they play them in October or November, I think they lose by 47 points. And so the Big 12 was bad. I'd give Steve Sarkisian a shot for every point he lost by. But okay, sorry. But I genuinely think that's the thing. And the Big 12 was weak. I think if they played Oklahoma in the Big 12 title, they'd have lost again. That's where I land on it.
Well, let's go outside the SEC again for a second. I really like what Dan Lanning did at Oregon. I know he didn't make it to the playoff, but I guess if I'm looking, I can't find anybody outside the SEC other than Ohio State, and I'm not a true believer in Ohio State with Ryan Day, as is Caleb. So I would just probably, if I was going to bet on somebody making a move, it would be Oregon. I like Dan Lanning.